Good evening and welcome to another special episode of Chit Chat. Joining me tonight is Max from Gamecast and the Coalition, and I will put some links into both those in the description. And Max attended E3 along with other members of the Coalition this year, and tonight I'm hoping to grill him about what it's like to be a member of the press at E3, what he saw, who he spoke to, what goodies he came away with, and stuff like that. One thing we won't be going into in any detail tonight, though, is Cyberpunk 2077, and there's a really good reason for that, and that's because Max spoke to Sully over at Gamecast about that at some length on the Pocket Edition episode that they recorded a couple of days ago, and that's already up, so I'll put a link into that as well. So go and check that out, because that's a really good listen. But before we get down and dirty about what happens behind closed doors at E3, I'd like to do what I always do with new guests on the show and ask Max a little bit about his gaming history and how he became a gamer and all the usual stuff. So, Max, how did you become a gamer?
Well, Joe, first off, thanks for having me. This is awesome to be on. But the start of me becoming a gamer was actually back. I'm 22 now, but it was back when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I kind of played some educational games on the computer, but I didn't really know much about the world of gaming or anything like that. But one Christmas, my parents ended up getting us the first ever PlayStation, the PlayStation 1, with each, there's three of us, and we each got our own game. I got Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, and looking back, I've read reviews, like watch gameplay of the game. That game is atrocious, even for like its standards, like PS1 standards. It's just not a good game. But back then, when I was a kid and I had no frame of reference, this game was fantastic. It was my favorite game, and I love Scooby-Doo and everything like that. And just since then, I slowly like built up my library on that. I would find games at the store, much not to my parents' pleasure. They weren't big fans of me gaming and everything, but there was just something about it that hooked me from the start. I just liked the challenge. I think to this day, I think the biggest thing is the challenge. It's really, really stimulating, like playing like games like Crash Bandicoot and everything, and Dark Souls and all that stuff. Those have always been my favorite types of games, and maybe that's because Scooby-Doo was like my first game, and that was challenging as hell. But not because it was well designed, just because it was poorly designed, actually, from what I can remember. But and then since then, I played games a lot. I went from like GameCube to PS2, played Battlefront, Kingdom Hearts, those were all my favorite games. But it wasn't until the Xbox 360 when I started taking it really seriously. It was when I was in 6th or 7th grade at the time, so middle school. And I went over to my friend's house, and he was playing a little game you may know of called Halo 3. And
Yeah.
I had heard of the Halo franchise beforehand, but I hadn't really ever played it because my parents were super strict about like T and M games and everything like that, just like higher rated games that weren't for kids. So
Yeah.
I never really got around to those types of things, never really even thought about it or anything like that. But there was something, he was playing like Halo 3 online, and it just like gripped me from the start. And this was in like the middle of summer when I first experienced it. So I'd go over to his house and play that all the time, as often as I could. And since then, I begged my parents for a 360 and Halo 3 for Christmas, like every day for like 6 months straight, coming up until Christmas. And they never budged. They never acted like they were going to do it. I went online and found anything I could about how Halo wasn't that bad of a game. And I still, to this day, do not think Halo should have been M-rated. Hell, the fifth one, the newest one, they even finally lowered it to T.
Yeah.
So hopefully kids nowadays won't have to put up with that same fight I did. But I did everything I could to like try and convince them it wasn't bad. And I found out later on, because they did end up getting it for me for Christmas, and then the rest is history. I played everything after that. But I found out later on, my mom only ended up buying the game because she thought it was shooting other robots, because like the way Spartan armor is. She was like, "You're not shooting people, you're shooting robots." And I was just kind of like, "Oh, I'm glad that's what you thought." And I ended up telling her that's not the case at all. And she was like, "Really?" She got like kind of mad at herself for it. Like,
and you grew up to be a serial killer, so...
Yep, exactly. I'm just the most violent person anyone's ever met. No, but So yeah, since then, I built up a whole group of friends back in high school around Halo 3 and, other games branching out from there. But Halo 3 is really the game. At a time, we had 15 to 16 people logging on every weekend to play custom games, like those Forge maps you can make and like different game modes and stuff. So we would just every weekend for years, and that evolved into like StarCraft 2. I ended up playing for a long time, played a lot of MMOs, and just, to this day, it's my hobby. I do it almost every day because it's something I love, and I believe in a lot of like therapeutic and physiological like effects that games can have that can be very positive. That Joe and I were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but that's actually something I'm looking to get involved more with this year, is bringing that to light to sort of the general public and people who don't really understand games. I'd like to go more into like the psychology behind them and everything like that. That's sort of my next step into games, I think, because I think that that's very unexplored territory, and I think that that's something that could be brought to light more.
Yeah, from what I can see, there's a real lack of real academic research into that area for gaming. You get it in things like books and films. There's a whole mass of literature in those areas, but there's virtually nothing in gaming as far as I'm aware anyway.
There is some things, believe it or not. There are a few things. They're just not very well known, and they're pretty well done. But that's the thing. And it's crazy to me that people don't think so, because if you can study music and film and stuff, how could you not study games? It adds a layer of interactivity. And, there's all these negative talks about it. So, of course, it has some stronger effect than, like, music and movies do. Not to diss them. They're great in their own right. But the fact that gaming has interactivity, it's just this whole new thing. And it amazes me that people aren't more interested in this sort of thing. You know what I mean? And, like, that there isn't more positive talk.
I think a lot of it is basically based around pure ignorance. People are making they're making their minds up about something that they actually know very little about, and then they're being fed nonsense by the popular press.
Yep.
I mean, we could go on about that ad infinitum and what's gone on with Fortnite recently and the potential bans for that and all the rest of it.
Right.
But that's for another day. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting subject area, and I'd like to talk about that a bit more. So maybe when you've done a little bit of research, looked into it, I'll have you on again and we can discuss that. That'd be interesting.
I'd be happy to.
Cool. Excellent. So is there anything else you would want to say about where you've gone with gaming? I mean, one thing I would be interested in would be how you got into the sort of gaming journalism area and how you got involved with the coalition, and what led you up to ending up what we're going to talk about tonight, how you ended up being in a situation where you ended up going to E3 and got into behind closed doors talking about Cyberpunk, which obviously we're not going to cover here, but how you got there. So would you like to give us a little bit about that for a moment?
Yeah, definitely. So ever since like early high school, I always did like gaming videos. I was never very good at them, but they were just something I always did for fun and something I always dreamed of doing as a career one day, but it was always more of a hobby back then until like later on when I got into college, when I started taking it more seriously in like the past 2 years or so. And it was just my 2-year anniversary is this month, actually, at the Coalition. So yeah, about 2 years ago, around this time, I was looking to like expand my reach beyond just like my personal YouTube channel. So I was actually just browsing through Reddit, just searching for like game journalism jobs, just thinking, what the hell? Like I didn't have a portfolio or anything like that. I was never particularly interested in writing per se. I was always fine at it at school, but it was never something that like particularly hooked me. I would just write scripts for my YouTube channel and everything like that. But yeah. So I ended up finding a post. They were looking for new writers on Reddit. And I just sent something out to them just thinking nothing will come of it. I just said, sure, like I'd love to apply to this and see what happens. They didn't get back to me for like a whole week, so I didn't really think anything of it. I kind of forgot about it. And then one Sunday morning, I got a message from, he's not the editor-in-chief at the Coalition, but someone who had been there. The site's been around for 10 years. This is their 10-year anniversary, but someone who had been there for a very long time, like one of the top editors there. And he said, hey, we do a podcast every Sunday. We like your YouTube channel, and we're wondering if you'd like to be on the podcast as sort of like your interview and everything, like to sort of test you out. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, sure. And I was super nervous. because it was my first time really ever doing a podcast or anything, and I did terrible on it. But for some reason, they thought I did fine. And then since then, I just started writing for them. I originally started doing editorials for them, but then I moved more into game reviews and news and stuff like that. But they've actually been going to E3 for like 8 or 9 years, I think, or 7 or 8 years. For majority of the time they've been with the coalition has been around, they've been going to E3 just because they were able to build up that traffic back when they were a smaller website. So now they've been able to carry that on, and they've made industry connections and everything like that. So last year I was able to tag along with them and go, and then this year has been my second year at E3. And let me tell you, games journalism is really fun, but it can be incredibly stressful. A lot of people think that it's just like, going into or just playing games all the time. People just think it's playing games. And that's really not it at all. In fact, this is probably the least I've ever played games in my entire life. It's been since I started at the Coalition and everything like that. Which is quite
the catch-22, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your job is to be a writer, not necessarily to play the games, Like, yes, you have to play games as well, but your job is to, cover them and be a writer. So that's where you're spending most of your time. And then actually since then, I ended up joining up with another website as well called Tech Raptor, they're a fantastic group of people as well. And I actually got to meet up with them in person at this year's E3, which is really cool. So I'm a part of a couple of gaming sites. I have some interesting people I know in the industry, interesting PR people, stuff like that. So it's a really fun time, and E3 is absolutely insane. I know that we want to go more into that, so I guess I'll transition into more of the E3 talk. It's definitely something growing up. It was always like my dream to go to it. So the fact that I'm even able to go to it is absolutely insane. But it's the first thing that I definitely was a misconception for me and was like cleared up quickly by the time I got there was just how much work it is. When you're at, oh my God, E3 is just, you don't really sleep. You're just in appointments day in, day out, because how it works is, yes, you have the conferences from, I guess nowadays it's Saturday to Tuesday, even though back then it used to be like Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, or like Sunday through Wednesday,
Gets longer every year, doesn't it?
Exactly. Now you have like EA on Saturday and, Microsoft, Bethesda Sunday, and just ridiculous stuff like that. So how it works is we go to the press conferences. You don't go to everyone. Actually, they have to invite each person at each specific website every year. So you're not necessarily guaranteed an invite each year, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because, you just watch it if you don't get to go there. At the end of the day, you're just sitting in an audience watching it. That's the difference. It's still really cool to be there, and they do some effects like this year when Microsoft was showing off Forza Horizon 4 and they were showing off the seasons, they ended up raining leaves on us, which was actually really kind of cool. It was just a small effect, but it was kind of cool, And it's just the atmosphere of being there, and you get some cool stuff sometimes, like the lanyards and stuff like that to show that you've been there. So that's really cool. But after the press conferences, for everyone back home, like E3 is done. It's like you stop watching on like that Tuesday and everything. But how it works for us is Tuesday through Thursday, you're on the show floor now. There's just this giant convention, and you have appointments generally back to back to back. This year, if I'm not mistaken, the show floor was open from 9 to 7 p.m., if not 10 to 7, which is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think that's fair for the PR and devs that have to stand there all day. But,
it's exhausting.
Yeah, last year it was till 5 p.m., but fact of the matter is you're walking the floor most of the day. You're making appointments. You're meeting with people. You're talking. You have to be on all day. And then you're taking notes where you can. You're trying to remember people's names. You're getting business cards. You're meeting up with other journalists. You have to find time to eat in between all of that. So it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's a good ridiculous. It's fun. Stressful. It's a good stress, but it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. And the biggest thing this year especially is just the atmosphere and how positive it is. I know that a lot this year I have been just kind of annoyed with the games industry, not because of journalists or anything like that, but more so just the public. You just go on Twitter or something and just people are always complaining. Like, oh, they change a feature in the game and you send death threats to the developers and stuff. It's all
that's just ridiculous.
Like that. Yeah. And it's just people are always complaining. They have an issue with every game in existence. You can't even have discourse anymore. You can't say you dislike a game or, people just despise you. It's really dumb. That doesn't happen at all at E3. Everyone there is just super awesome, super warm-hearted. They just want to talk about games. You just walk up to someone and start a conversation. And if you disagree with them, it's fun and you debate. You don't get at each other's throats or anything like that, So that's always... What's that?
That's how it should be.
That's how it should be. I don't know why Twitter isn't that way. It's just, the internet and people have to be evil. You're allowed to not like things. That's actually great. Let's talk about it. But, it's just people are just constantly just evil online. But so, yeah, that's always great. You meet a bunch of people. This year, I met double the people I did last year, which is absolutely insane. Like, it was a huge amount of people I met and just made acquaintances or friends with and traded business cards with and everything. So that's really cool. It's always a really cool time, meeting up with PR people, putting faces to names of the people you've been emailing all year, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good time. It's really fun. It's a lot of work. And a lot of the time, you're not even playing a game. Sometimes you're just behind closed doors. People are showing you a game. You're not really playing it or anything like that. Or when you do get to play, it's like a 15-minute demo, which depending on the game, that can be... not a lot. Like if you're playing like a survival game like Minecraft or something, like 15 minutes is nothing. Like what are you going to get done in 15 minutes? And that happens.
Yeah, you're barely going to scratch the surface, are you?
Exactly. And that's part of like the quote unquote job, or like the skill of doing the job, quote unquote, is you being able to see if this is something that has potential and seeing if you can tell it'll build up to something later on once you put more hours into it, and if it's even worth it and stuff like that, which, with a well-designed game, you can usually tell. And you have the PR guy talking to you the whole time. He's answering your questions, telling you how to play, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's stuff like that too. So you learn a lot about the game as well, but it's always really interesting, and it's really cool to get a hands-on things. It's like you'll watch trailers and then you'll actually get a hands-on, and it's just a totally different scenario,
Which so you did with Cyberpunk, didn't you? Which you talked to with Sully about. You didn't actually play it yourself, I seem to think, but I'm not going to go into detail here, obviously, but you saw someone playing it, is that right?
Correct. They presented it. We went behind closed doors, and they presented it to a group of like 30 journalists here or there. That's actually a pretty common thing. They'll take a group of like 30 of you people, like they'll take an appointment like every hour, and they'll put 30 people in a room, and they'll do like a demo, but like they'll be playing it. Someone will be playing it. So it's hands off, but you just watch it on a screen, and someone else is talking and presenting everything and telling you what's going on while the person is playing for like an hour or half hour or something like that.
Cool. Did you, I mean, I presume you did. Did you have any other demos that, along those lines this year? Anything that stood out?
Let's see. Remedy's Control. It was hands off, but it was really, really cool to see.
Oh God, I'm
like,
so excited about
gameplay. Yeah, that game looks fantastic. Dying Light 2 was another one. Absolute surprise. That was awesome. Believe it or not, and I don't see a lot of people talking about this, the World War Z game, the movie World War Z in the book. I'm not a big fan of the movie. I love the book, but I'm not a big fan of the movie. But the game, this is actually one of our biggest surprises at E3. It's a lot like Left 4 Dead in terms of just traditional gameplay, where there's 4 of you just going through zombie-infested areas and stuff like that. But there's more of a focus on stealth, first of all. It's a third-person game, not first-person. And, if you've seen World War Z, it's about hordes and hordes of zombies that are really fast. They're always sprinting at you, which Left 4 Dead does to a degree. But this is a little bit different. It's the hordes from the movies, like hundreds and hundreds of them at once, which is absolutely awesome. They built their entire engine around it. And it has stealth mechanics, which is really, really cool. So you'll start out the level, you have a silenced weapon, and you'll try and take out as many zombies. Excuse me. You'll try to take out as many zombies as you can without being seen until, one of the zombies sees you, yells, and then just the horde comes. And there's different segments in it as well, where like Gears of War Horde, where you have to set up like actual traps in different paths and stuff like that, and prepare for weapons, where you have to call a horde in order for you to progress further into the level. So they'll just be coming at you like crazy, and you could just see them all coming. Like they'll be jumping over a gate, and you'll try and shoot them down from the gate, and then zombies will be coming from behind you as well. So you have to watch that side. So you really need a competent team with you and everything like that. And it was just a really cool surprise, and I think it's a good twist on Left 4 Dead. I thought at the start it was just going to be kind of a clone, but it's implementing a lot of its own really cool ideas. And having the hordes like that is just absolutely insane. It's really cool. So
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah. no, it is, and it was definitely one of our highlights that we were not expecting to be as good as it was. So that was really, really cool to experience.
That is cool. I mean, I'd literally all I knew about that was I'd heard the title and I knew no more about it. So
yeah, I feel like that's how it is. I was the same way, and since it's still been that's the only coverage I've even seen of it. To be quite honest with you, I don't know why it isn't being talked about more.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean, maybe I mean, I don't know. Presumably, there's no date for it yet, so maybe it's a while away.
From what I remember, I think it's like next year.
Interesting. I'll be keeping my eye open for that one because that does look interesting. I've not read the book; I've only seen the movie, but
right.
So yeah, that'd be worth keeping an eye out for. Were there any others that you were particularly wowed by?
Let's see. Bloodstained, I believe it's Ritual of the Night or Curse of the Night is the subtitle. I forget exactly which one it is, but it's sort of a spiritual successor to the Castlevania games. It's being built in that style, and it's actually a really, really fantastic rendition so far, and I really, really enjoyed that. It's this absolutely gorgeous game. And
a mate of mine's going to be so stoked about that. He loves those games. So.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic, and I believe that's coming out this summer. Actually, it's coming out pretty soon. It was really successful on Kickstarter.
That'll make him even happier. He's a teacher, so he's got the summer off.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. Oh, what else? What else did I see? God, it's been a couple of weeks now. That's the thing.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you've been asleep since then, hopefully.
And that's the thing. There's so much of it. Sometimes you just straight up forget, and like you'll get an email, and it's like, oh yeah, I saw that game. Oh, the Spectrum Retreat. This is.
I know nothing about this one.
You have or you have not?
No. I've not heard anything about this one.
Oh, it's an indie game. It's actually being made by this guy named Dan Smith. He started developing it at the age of 15. He's now age 20. And in the middle of that, yeah, right. And in the middle of that, at like 18, I think it was, he ended up getting picked up by a publisher, and he won a BAFTA Game Award for it because of like innovative design and just well designed and everything like that. And this man is 20. He's 2 years younger than I am, and he's making this indie puzzler that looks absolutely fantastic. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, holy shit. And I played through it while talking to him, and he's a really, really smart dude, as you could probably imagine. And the game looks really, really cool. It's coming out in a couple weeks, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And it's this indie puzzler where you're trapped in you wake up in a hotel, and you're the only one there. And the staff are robots, but they treat you like really, really well. It takes place in sort of a futuristic, like Art Deco kind of styled universe. And there's these robots that talk to you, and they treat you really well.
I'm liking the sound of this, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And they treat you really well and everything, but like you don't really have free will. They're like, all right, go eat your breakfast, and you go eat your breakfast and everything until you're contacted by someone who's like, you need to get out of here. Like you're being held against your will and stuff. So you kind of have to sneak around the hotel while trying to act normal. Right, and this is like one half of the game. And then there's the other half of the game, which are puzzle rooms. So you'll get to a certain spot where you get into puzzle rooms where it's like Portal, where you just have like 5 stages, and then you have to play through them. And it's not like Portal in terms of puzzle solving. It's different here. It's really, really hard to describe. It's something you just kind of have to see. Like even when I was writing about it, I had a hard time describing it. There's like different blocks of color. They could be white, blue, or orange. And you have this device, and you could take the color from one box, and you can move it to another box, and it opens up a force field that allows you to like walk through it. And it ends up being a game of trying to organize the colors to open up the force fields in a proper order so you can walk through. I know that's not the best description, but it's really just something you have to see in order for it to make sense. And that's also the fact that I can't describe it is kind of a good thing, because it's like nothing I've really seen, and I play a lot of indie puzzlers. Like they're my favorite things in the world.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that as you were saying it, I was thinking that the fact that this is kind of almost beyond the normal descriptive terms for a lot of those games is a good thing.
Yes,
because it means that it's doing something new and different and interesting. So yeah, that's another one.
Exactly. And I was a big fan of it. It looks really, really cool. And it's, again, as someone who's played a ton of indie puzzlers, I usually blow through them pretty quickly, and I'm not impressed by many anymore. And this one is really, really something new and cool. So I highly recommend checking it out. I think everyone should. And the man is a genius.
What was the title of it again?
The Spectrum Retreat. Spectrum, Spectrum. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep my eyes open for that one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. There were definitely other highlights, but then there were like times where I saw like hardware and stuff like that I can't really talk about just yet. I heard Overkill's The Walking Dead looks really bad, actually, and doesn't look fun. So that's actually pretty interesting to me because, that's the zombie game people are hyped for. Not World War Z, but World War Z is the one we should be playing. Based on my experience and for what I've been hearing.
It was often the case, isn't it?
Yeah, so we'll see about that. Oh, I got to play the new Smash for a little bit. I got to try the new characters. I'm not super... Like, I've played a lot of Smash, but I'm not super literate on, like, super deep terms like frame skipping and stuff like that. So I can't comment much on how that played. Like new little twists like that. But I can definitely I played all the new characters. I played Snake, who was my favorite in Brawl, so I played him. He plays very similar to what I remember, so that was fantastic. I played Inkling, who I love. Inkling was awesome. Sonic is my main. Generally, Sonic, Link, and Fox I switch between. And Inkling, I feel, is not necessarily a clone Sonic, but plays very similar to Sonic, down to the recovery, which is pretty cool. I really liked how she played. She was a really, really cool, fast, and powerful character. And then Ridley, I did not like Ridley in the slightest. Ridley was slow and stiff and played like a worse Ganondorf, in my opinion. I was not a fan at all in the slightest. And then I played a Sonic just because I love Sonic, and he played pretty much the same. I will say, disclaimer though, I only play Smash with the GameCube controller, and when we were there, we had to play with the Pro controllers on the Switch, so a lot of my time was spent trying to learn the controls and the different button placements and everything on there.
Oh man, that's horrible.
Yeah, it was brutal. I still got second and first in the rounds though, so I was happy about that. But so part of that may have been contributing to me not liking Ridley, but I do kind of have a feeling that I just hate it. I just hate the way that plays anyways. When I play Smash, I don't play slow and bulky. That's not how I like to play Smash. But for people who like that, I'm sure there's definitely a fit for it and everything like that. But no, that was really cool. That wasn't even an appointment or press or anything. That was just us standing in line and playing it, which I don't generally do there because it's like I'd rather just wait for the game to come out than stand in a 3-hour line, and you also don't really have time for that as press.
Frankly, I'd rather die than stand in a 3-hour line.
Yeah, I don't do that for anything. Like nothing where I have to wait in a 3-hour line is worth it to me. I'm not going to do that. But it was cool Smash. It was Smash, but it was cool. It was really fun. It feels great, and the new characters are good. And it's awesome that they're bringing everyone back, too. That's absolutely fantastic.
And do you think, how close to final code was that? Is it, do you think they'll tweak it at all before it comes out? Or is that pretty much done?
I'm sure there are going to be some minute tweaks here and there, but that game's coming out in, December? I think. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was close to final build. If there's gonna be some small tweaks here and there, but in terms of what we played, it's pretty final build. And it feels like Smash 4. I if you didn't tell me it was different, I would have thought it was Smash 4. Straight up, But which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's like you can't screw with Smash too much, otherwise it's not Smash, So it's what we expect, and it's going to be on the Switch, and hopefully there's single player content this time because I hate that there wasn't single player content in Smash 4.
Yeah, I didn't like the fact that they took the. I'm not talking Smash here. I'm talking about when they brought out the sort of Splatoon 2. They called it. I thought it was a port more than anything else. But we lost the split screen ability for that. I used to play that with my kid, and it obviously wasn't split screen. It was the dual screen on the Wii U, and you would play it one on the screen on the handheld and one on the screen on the telly, and you could play against each other. And then I thought that when they brought out 2, they would bring it out with a split screen option because obviously they haven't got the 2 screens as they did on the Wii U. So I thought, they're bound to do a split screen, and they didn't. And I thought that was a real missed opportunity because it's a perfect game for sitting down and playing with your family and having a blast,
Right. That's surprising. Wow, I didn't know they cut that.
Yeah, well,
people need to rage about that.
Yeah, well, I did. I got annoyed about it and pissed off a few Nintendo fanboys.
Oh God!
Because how dare you criticize Nintendo?
Yeah.
But I've said this countless times to Sully and to Count as well, and anyone else who will listen. I'm not the biggest Nintendo fan. I wasn't somebody who came up with Nintendo really. I came up with being in the UK. It was the Commodore 64 and the Spectrum and things like that I was playing, and so Nintendo, right. they're not my childhood really. So I haven't got that kind of that hook that you get for Nintendo or for whoever it is. It's like some music that you listen to at certain times, some books you read at certain times. You get they hook you, and there's more to them than just I've played them or I've read them or I've watched them or whatever it might be. You get a kind of love for them that goes beyond that. That it goes deeper, and I haven't got that for Nintendo.
Okay, yeah,
but I can still accept that Nintendo are a fantastic company in terms, especially some of their policies leave something to be desired. But as a company that makes games, they make fantastically solid games. I mean, I talk to a friend of mine about this all the time, and the fact that when Nintendo put out a game, it's usually finished, which is not something you get very often these days.
Yeah, and it's usually bug-free, polished to hell.
Exactly.
It feels really good to play.
But
just fantastic.
But at the same time, while I can accept that doesn't mean that I can't be critical of them. And
exactly,
I think sometimes people misunderstand. We touched on this earlier, didn't we? That people misunderstand being annoyed or being upset with something or disliking a certain aspect of something, and then you can disagree or agree or whatever. And disagreeing is not. I've said this loads of times, but disagreeing is not the same as disrespect. You can
right. You can respectfully disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And you can dislike something, and your best mate can love it. Doesn't mean you're suddenly going to stop being mates, or do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
if so, they're probably not a good friend in the first place.
Well, exactly. I mean, the people who get upset about these things and can't have a conversation about them with a reasonably level head. I mean, yeah, you can get heated about it. You can have a heated conversation. But as I've said this to Grant a few times, Grant from Over the Edge, I think.
Yep.
I've said this to him. If you keep it about the subject at hand, if you talk about the issue that's current, then you can be as heated as you like. Just don't make it personal. Just don't go after the person, because you start doing that, you've immediately lost the argument.
It's dumb.
It is.
It's very, very dumb.
And so, when you say about being at E3 and it being positive and people having, respectful disagreements or proper conversations, that for me, that's the holy grail. I don't mind disagreeing with people. I'll sit and disagree with people all day long and have a pint with them and get on with them. I don't have to agree with someone to like them.
Exactly.
It just, the whole thing strikes me as being utterly bizarre when people get so uptight and so upset that they have to, they send, was it the guy who broke the story that No Man's Sky was going to be released at a later date? It was held off for a couple of months.
Oh, Jason Schreier?
Yeah, he got death threats, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I mean,
killing the messenger right there.
Utterly pathetic. I'm sorry.
No, it is. It's stupid. It's absolutely dumb. Like, no respect for anyone who does that. It makes no sense. It's not like it was his fault in the slightest. And he was right. People always disagree with this man. Yeah,
and the thing is, even if he'd been wrong, there's still no excuse to send him death threats.
Oh, yeah. No, you just be like, okay, he was wrong, and that's it.
Move on. But anyway, we're going off subject, so...
Yeah. Yeah, we could talk on that forever.
Yeah, and I've talked at length about it before and probably will again. But going back to E3, just before we move on, I just need to ask you again, was there anything else you particularly would want to bring up? Obviously, you've been through Smash and a couple of other things as well. If there's anything else that you'd like to mention before we move on and talk more generally about what happened as well, I'd like to hear about maybe some of the parties or whatever, if you attended any of those in a minute.
I just remembered, I ended up playing the Spiderman.
Oh, wow, cool.
For 15 minutes. If I'm being completely honest with you, movement and traversal was fantastic. Going through the city was fantastic. Just feels like the Spider-Man 2 PS2 game. It was just as great as you can imagine it would be. But I will say the combat, even though I didn't get to experience it for a ton of time, I thought the combat was very limiting and kind of boring. It didn't. It was fun to play. It felt good, but there wasn't depth to it at all. Like by the time I was done, and again, this was like a 15-20 minute demo, I felt like I'd seen everything combat had to offer. In terms of like your moveset and everything, I'm sure that there's more to it, and I'm sure that that was just limited because of the demo, but I just wasn't really feeling it that well. I don't know what it was. It just didn't seem like the type of thing that would carry me through a whole, open world superhero game that's probably 40 hours, give or take. My colleagues like kind of disagreed with me and kind of agreed with me. We're kind of back and forth on it, so it's hard to say for sure. I'm sure it's going to be better, and I'm still hyped as all hell for the game. But yeah, that was a bit surprising to me. I wasn't really expecting that, to say the least. But then in terms of parties and how that goes, so Sony ends up doing a party after their conference every year, which is really, really neat. So we ended up going to this like after party that they have a bunch of food for you, just like gourmet burgers, pizzas. They had a bunch of gourmet Japanese food this time to celebrate Ghost of Tsushima. They had like pot stickers. They had like shrimp on a stick, a bunch of dishes that I had never heard of and didn't know the names to, but were delicious. We got sake shots. They give you free alcohol, which was really, really cool. So it was a fun time. It was really, really interesting to be there. And that was really cool. And then there's this other party that I absolutely love attending in the 2 years I've been there. It's called the Indie Mix.
Okay.
It takes place on the rooftop of this hotel. And it's basically just a giant group of all these indie developers just setting up booths, and you talk to them, you play indie games, you trade business cards. It's essentially like being on the convention show floor, but this time indie focused. And it's really, really cool. You meet some really awesome people there that are fun to talk to. You learn about the indie industry and all that sort of stuff. And that's definitely my favorite thing to go to every year. In terms of like parties, I haven't really been to many of them. There are people that do, and like we get invites to them, but I don't know. They're just not really my thing. Maybe in a couple of years, but I tend to be really tired after E3 and everything at the end of the day, so I go to bed early and wake up early, to be fair.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd have time to fit it in. I mean, there's so much going on anyway. You'd be bloody knackered by the end of the day.
Exactly. And it's just, there are people that do it. There are people who get like 3 hours of sleep every night there. I don't know how.
Bolivian marching
maybe. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's not something I can do. To be fair, my body just doesn't work that way right now. So yeah, there are people that definitely do that. But no, I've heard the parties are fun, and I'm sure you make great connections. And honestly, I owe it to myself to start going to those more, to meet more people and everything.
It sounds. It sounds. When I hear it from you talking about it, there's elements of it that sound like, okay, that sounds like I would expect, and there are other elements of it that are like, okay, yeah, that's actually quite different to what I was expecting. The stuff that I find most interesting, though, I suppose it's because, we're talking games here, is the actual being able to go in and see, these games actually in action. Because, as you say, for someone who's sitting at home, we watch the conferences and we see some footage or whatever, but we don't actually get up close and personal with these games until later on, unless they, you do get occasionally, you'll get demos released onto your Xbox or your PlayStation or whatever. But that's the thing that would excite me, and I think from talking to you, that seems to be the thing that really gets you interested as well. The getting in and being able to see these games up close and personal at quite an early stage not in their development, because obviously a lot of them are quite close to being out. Although I've heard that Cyberpunk's probably quite a long way off, so I don't know. As we know, with all these games, quite often they get put back, and we finally get them a lot later than we were initially expecting. So I mean, I don't know what if you had to sum it up and take, say the one thing about E3 that really gets you excited and that would make you want to go back again. What would it be? What would you say would be the most interesting part of E3 and the most useful as well? What's the most useful, as from a journalistic perspective? What did you get from it that was most useful?
Let's see. Definitely the people. Meeting the people and talking to the people is definitely the biggest highlight of E3 to me.
The networking, basically.
Yes, the networking, and they're also, they're just a bunch of genuinely good people for the most part. Just everyone there is really happy to be there. You feel like these people are your best friends, even though you just met them or like you only know them online and stuff like that. So that's always just one of the most fantastic things. In terms of playing games early and previews and everything like that, it is cool. Don't get me wrong. But as coming as more of a fan, it can get kind of like not stressful or frustrating or anything like that, but it's just like you play 15 minutes of a game because most of the demos are that short, and it's just kind of like, that was really cool and I can write about it and everything, but then it's like now I have to wait a year to play it and everything like that. So it's almost like kind of a burden to have. It's like I'd rather just wait until the game is done and can experience the whole thing. Instead, you have to experience like 15 minutes in the middle of it.
Yeah, because I suppose the other thing there as well is, by the time the game comes out, it could look completely different and feel completely different anyway. So how much of this is actually a good representation of what's going to finally turn up on the shelves?
And it can playing games early can also be kind of a burden and maybe even leave a bad impression on you sometimes. Like in the case of Spiderman, like I'm sure there's a lot more to it than what I was shown, but I don't know that. And from what I've seen, it's all I can say is that it just doesn't feel very good to play. You know what I mean? But they can also have the opposite effect, whereas with Anthem this year, I didn't get to play it myself, but in terms of what they've shown off, Anthem looks pretty boring and average in my opinion. But what I've heard is that everyone who's actually gotten to play it behind closed doors, it's absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. So that's one case where it's actually a really good thing that journalists are able to do that and everything, because otherwise we'd all still think this game looks really average. But from what I'm hearing, it's absolutely amazing and fun to play. But again, there are cases where sometimes maybe a demo goes buggy or something like that, because they're always early states of games, so crashes and bugs aren't that unheard of. So it's possible that, or maybe you just weren't able to get accustomed to the controls right away, or you spent the whole time getting accustomed to them instead of actually playing the game, so that can leave a bad taste in your mouth. And with the right website like IGN or something, that can ruin a game. That can ruin the coverage of a game. Because I guess the review could still save it, but if the press early on is bad, people will dismiss it. Like you're still going to get a smaller base.
I think, from that perspective, journalists have quite a responsibility, because they have to, I think they have to be scrupulously fair.
Yes.
We were saying before about, it's fine to criticize something, but, from your point of view, if you're writing about something, if a game is, if a final code obviously turns out to be utter garbage, then yeah, it's fair enough to say so. But when you're talking about a demo, you have to surely bear in mind that it's just that. It's a demo.
Yes, exactly.
And so you have to give it a certain amount of leeway and think, well, if it's like this when it finally arrives, then okay, time to draw the knives. But at the moment, let's give it a little bit of a little bit of leeway and say, okay, look, it's buggy or it doesn't really appeal to me as it stands at the moment. Like, you said with Spider-Man, you don't think the combat is particularly great at the moment, but that's reasonable enough, and it could well be better by the time it comes out. They may add extra stuff in. You may be able to ramp it up as you move through the game. We don't know at this stage. So, I do think sometimes looking at some of the way journalism covers both gaming and other things, politics, everything else. This tendency to go to one side or the other all the time, where either something's fantastic or something bloody awful, and there's no kind of meeting in the middle. Goes back to what we were talking about before. That I don't know, but I think as from a perspective of somebody who reads articles by people, I want somebody who tries to present me with a balanced argument. I don't want somebody who's going to get the hatchet out and just do a hatchet job on something. Or the other side of things, I don't want somebody who's going to just yell and shout and pray. You get this with YouTubers. You get some people who anything by Nintendo or anything by Sony or anything by Microsoft is perfect, and anything by the other guys is rubbish.
Yep.
And we all know that's bull.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. But there are developers that get off on that too, though, like Bethesda and stuff too, which is like kind of bad because they only send their games. Well, that's not true. They send them to review sites still, but they put YouTubers and influencers like that on a higher tier. They'll get games earlier and stuff like that because they'll keep generating positive press because they do that. They do that, and that's not fair to the consumers.
No, I absolutely agree, and I look at what happens with Nintendo as well. I mean, as I say, I can't really knock them for their quality of their game design, but I can knock them for some of their policies. You know, things like with YouTubers, if you don't want to have your videos claimed, you kind of have to sign up for their I can't remember what they call it.
Their partner program or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, if you see someone with Nintendo gameplay, either they're going to get that video claimed by Nintendo or they're already signed up. So you can't really 100% trust what they're saying.
Yep.
Because, you know, there's always someone looking over their shoulder. So I find that whole element of the industry, I find that a bit, well, disturbing is probably a bit extreme because we're just talking games at the end of the day and it's, you know, entertainment. But I do find it a little bit disingenuous, and I would like to see, you know, I like to see honest reviews. And if the person who's reviewing something, again going back to this thing, if they say something about a game and I love that game and they don't love that game, as long as I feel they're being honest about it, that's all I care about.
Yep.
There used to be a film reviewer, he's died now, but there used to be a film reviewer in the UK called Barry Norman.
Okay.
And I quite often would disagree with him, but I used to really enjoy watching his reviews because I always felt like he was honest. His reviews were always entertaining, and he always had something to say that was worth listening to.
Right.
And I think to some extent, not everywhere, but to some extent, journalism's lost that. There's a certain amount of integrity that seems to have been lost.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's like, I think part of it is just the way the media landscape has changed and how people need clicks. You know, they need more traffic to survive, which is, you know, that's an entirely other debate. But in terms of the games industry, like what you were saying with like the Nintendo partner program and you have people looking over your shoulder and stuff, that kind of exists with just journalists as well. Not so much that you're signed up with a partner program or anything like that. But, you know, if you have a relationship with a company like Bethesda or Nintendo or like indie companies or something and you trash their game, not unfairly, but if it's just a bad game and you objectively review it poorly because it's a poorly designed game, they may just cut ties with you and you won't be able to, you know, get those games anymore. And that's really not fair. So it's sort of a by favor, you know, based on favor review process. And how that's BS. Honestly, that's BS. That's stupid. That's not how it should be. A reviewer should be able to talk about their opinion on the game, but they should talk about it in a way where someone reading, like you or I, can draw what they disliked about that game and form our own opinion on it. It should be informative enough on that to where we can draw our own opinion. Like, oh, he doesn't like that. I understand why he doesn't like that. That makes sense. But this is something for me. That's what a good review should do, in my opinion. A good preview, a good video, any of that. And like you said, that's not the case. They'll absolutely praise it on YouTube and stuff like that. Or like with Nintendo, where you're partnered with them, you don't really have a choice in that regard. And it can be really frustrating.
It's from a consumer point of view, it's you just don't know who to trust.
Yes.
You know, and you know, we've all been burned. So I'm sure you have. I know I have, where I've read reviews of a game and I've thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm really interested in that. I'll go out and buy it. And it's a buggy mess, and they never mentioned any of that in the review. You know, this is like brilliant review. You know, brilliant game with all these, it's brilliant graphics and the gameplay's fantastic. Yeah, and you play it for 10 minutes and it crashes 15 times. You know, and it's like, well, I need to know that. Surely that's an important part of the review. And I mean, you know, just if things like. Is the voice acting any good? Is the, you know, all these things? Quite often you don't hear very much about these kind of things, you know. It's that sort of dichotomy that you get where people who are only interested in singing the praises and people are only interested in running something down, and the people who, well, you mentioned about this getting clicks, the people who are presenting a balanced argument and trying to be reasonable get drowned out It's like, when you go into the TV shop, I think I've said this before about something else. You go into the shop to buy a TV and you've got all these TVs and everything's turned up to like eye-searing levels. And so the TV that's actually the better TV you don't get to find because you're being blinded by all these other bloody things. And,
yes, I was just experiencing this the other day.
But it's weird because if you look at somebody like Bethesda or Nintendo when they do these things, and this idea that if somebody gives you a bad review, you're going to blacklist them. What's the rationale there? Is it because you're thinking, oh, they're going to give us a bad review for the next game? Well, no, because if they're an honest reviewer, they'll look at the game based on its own merits, and they're not going to just give one review a bad review just because they didn't like the tea when you went for a meeting there once or something like that. No, if somebody's a journalist and they're giving bad reviews based on stupid shit like that, then they shouldn't be in the industry.
Yep, exactly.
They should be looking at the game and saying, is this a good game? Why they like it, why some people might not like it so much, these kind of things. These are the important things. Certainly from a consumer's point of view, that's what you want to be reading for a review. Increasingly, it seems to me, though, that people want to be in their own echo chambers and they want to hear the game that they want to be good. They want someone to be saying it's good, even if it turns out to not be that good. And they won't admit that it's not that good just because they've already invested their mind into this idea that it has to be good because it's a Microsoft game or it's a Sony game or it's a Nintendo game. It's just crazy. Oh, wow. And so you go to these people who are basically repeating everything you want to hear. Cognitive bias, is it? I think they call it. I don't know. I can't remember what they call it. Confirmation bias. That's the one I'm looking for.
Yes.
And we all do it. We're all. I remember having a conversation with someone years ago, a friend of mine's mum actually, going on about confirmation bias and saying that we're all guilty of it. The trick is to realise that we're guilty of it and spot when we're doing it, and that's not always easy. And I went through all this with her, and her response at the end of it was, well, I don't. I don't engage in confirmation bias. It's everyone else. Of course not. Of course you don't.
That's hilarious.
And it's like, well, I give up because there's no point. The conversation's over at that point because they're not going to admit that they ever engage in those kind of things. And it's a human trait. Of course we want to have our egos massaged. Of course we want to be told the game that we like is the best game that's ever come out and the book that we like is the best book that anyone's ever read. Of course we do, but it's not true, is it? It's just, it's not real. It's not real. You're living in this little bubble of well, it's kind of virtual reality bubble. Sorry, I'm getting on my high horse, but yeah.
No worries. Yeah, it is. It's doing yourself a disservice in a lot of ways. Not even in just games, in anything. And not realizing these sorts of things and not being able to talk about these things objectively and constructively criticize them. It's really doing yourself a disservice at the end of the day.
It is indeed. And I suppose on that note, we're heading towards the hour mark.
Yeah.
If there's anything else you want to add before we finish up, feel free to do so now, and then I will finish this up and you can tell people where to find you and all the rest of it.
Fantastic. Let's see. Definitely stop arguing and being shitty on the internet and have more objective conversations because it's getting to the point where, especially on like Twitter and stuff in like comment sections, it's getting to the point where no one can say anything anymore and we can't have objective opinions on games and everything. And just honestly, sending death threats to someone over their opinion on a game or because they've reported about news on a game is just, it's dumb, and it makes everyone in the industry look bad. It makes the entire industry look bad, and we're at a point where we kind of need gaming to be more, well, we don't need gaming to be more accepted, but it's at a point where there's just like this big fight over it right now, and it's just really frustrating and kind of dumb, and that stuff isn't helping in the slightest. It's always a good thing when more people get into gaming and more people get into the game that you like. If you're a dick about it, no one wants to do that. So elitism just kind of needs to go away, and I think that's really annoying. And like, to tie it back into the conversation, that's why E3 is so great and like these gaming events are so great, is just because you're relieved of all of that. You can have objective conversation in person. You can just talk with people about games. You could disagree, and it's fantastic because you're with a bunch of open-minded, like-minded people. And I really wish that more gamers were able to experience that, because I feel like the internet, as much as it was designed that way and like it's built that way, it doesn't really lend itself to open-minded conversation. You know, there's just a lot of argument and a lot of disagreement, and it's just frustrating.
Yep.
A lot of the time. I
agree. Couldn't agree more. And on that note, I think now we've depressed everyone. I think we can. I think we can finish up. I usually depress people by the end of these, so you're in good company. So do you want to just one last time tell everyone where we can find you, about the Coalition, Gamecast, and the other areas that you are involved in, and then I will finish up.
Yes, definitely. So you guys can find me absolutely anywhere on the internet under the name Maxemole, Maxemole. That name has never been taken, and I've been able to use it since like middle school. I've been able to use it my whole life. But the best place to contact me is Twitter. I'm always on Twitter tweeting about things, games, stuff like that, any coverage I do. I do coverage for the Coalition and Tech Raptor, as well as Gamecast when I can. And then I do have a personal YouTube channel, which you'll probably come across, but I haven't posted on it in a long time, sadly. I'm looking to get around to doing that at some point, but everything else is sort of taking up time, so that's sort of dead right now, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. But yeah, definitely Twitter is the best place to find me and my work, and if you want to have a conversation about anything that went on in this podcast today, by all means. Or in the comment section of the video, of course. We can always discuss things there. But yeah, by all means, if you want to contact me, Twitter is the place to go.
And be sure to check out the Pocket Edition with Sully over at Gamecast, where Max talks with him about Cyberpunk 2077. They go into detail, I believe, Max. Do you go into quite a bit of detail about it there? And
yep. I pretty much recapped the whole demo for like 40 minutes.
So if you're interested in Cyberpunk, definitely go and check that out. And I'll put a link in both at the top of the screen and in the description at the bottom of this. And we're done. So thank you, Max, for being on. Hopefully we'll get you on again and we can put the world to rights again. And in the meantime, yeah, depress people. That's my mode of operation. That's what I usually do. And in the meantime, now we've depressed you all, we're going to go and, I'm going to go to bed. I don't know what Max is going to do, get a coffee or something. And I'll see you on the next one.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
No worries. Cheers, man. Thanks for being on.